Emily was excited as she walked into her daughter's school. It was a special day. She had come to surprise her teenage daughter. As she approached, she spotted Isabella sitting under a large tree with her friends, laughing and chatting. Emily's face lit up with happiness as she eagerly moved forward, ready to hug her daughter. But before she could reach her, she heard a sharp voice. Who was that fat woman? She looks like a monster. Olivia, one of Isabella's classmates, sneered. The group of teenagers burst into laughter. Isabella looked up and saw her mother. Her eyes widened, and her heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to run and hide, to pretend she hadn't seen her, but it was too late. Emily was right there. "My sweetheart," Emily called, her face glowing with love. She stretched out her arms, waiting for Isabella to run into them, just like she always had. But Isabella didn't move. "Isabella," Emily said softly. "Who is she?" one of the teens asked. Isabella swallowed hard. She felt everyone's eyes on her, and her cheeks burned with shame. I don't know who she is," she whispered. Emily gasped. "Isabella, it's me, your mom," she said, barely believing her ears. The teenagers looked at Isabella, waiting for her to speak. "How dare you call me your daughter?" Isabella scoffed. "You are not my mom. I don't even know who she is." Emily's hands trembled, and her eyes filled with tears. "How does she know your name?" another teen asked. "She was once our housekeeper," Isabella said quickly. Emily's eyes widened. Housekeeper? Her own daughter had called her a housekeeper. Emily's voice trembled as she stretched out her hand toward Isabella. "Isabella," she whispered, her eyes begging for a sign of love, of recognition. But Isabella's face hardened. Instead of reaching back, she stepped away. "You are not my mom," Isabella repeated coldly. Emily's lips quivered as she tried again, moving her trembling hand closer. But before she could touch her daughter, Isabella shoved her away. Emily lost her balance, stumbling backward and crashing to the ground. Pain shot through her body, but couldn't compare to the pain in her heart. She looked up, her eyes pleading, but Isabella turned and walked away without a second glance. Tears poured down Emily's cheeks as she sat helplessly on the cold pavement, watching her daughter disappear into the crowd. She wanted to scream, to call out to her, to tell her she still loved her, but no words came. A soft hand touched her shoulder. Emily looked up and saw Grace, one of Isabella's friends, kneeling beside her. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," Grace said gently, helping Emily to her feet. Emily didn't respond. Her heart was shattered. She wiped her tears and slowly walked toward her car, feeling weaker with every step. She fumbled for a phone and called her husband. As soon as he answered, she broke down, her voice choking with sobs. She denied me," Emily whispered. "Our own daughter. She pushed me away. She left me on the ground like a stranger." Her husband's voice was filled with shock and pain. "Emily, come home. We'll fix this." But Emily felt lost. As she started the car, her tears kept falling and the world outside blurred. Her hands shook on the steering wheel, and her sobs made her chest tighten. She didn't see the red light. She didn't see the massive lorry speeding toward her. A loud honk, the screech of brakes, and then a blinding light. The sound of metal crushing against metal filled the air, followed by screams. The car spun wildly before coming to a stop, completely wrecked. A crowd gathered, and the rescue team arrived in minutes. They rushed to the scene, cutting through the crumpled car, to reach the woman inside. Emily lay there, blood trickling down her forehead. Her body was still, her breath faint. "She's alive!" one of the rescuers shouted. "We need to get her to the hospital now." They lifted her gently and placed her in the ambulance. The sirens wailed as the vehicle sped through the city, rushing against time. Inside the hospital, doctors and nurses hurried to the emergency unit, checking her pulse, connecting tubes, and working quickly to keep her alive. Her husband ran into the hospital, his face pale with fear. "Where is she? Where's my wife?" he shouted. A nurse tried to calm him. "She's in surgery. The accident was severe." He sank into a chair, his hands gripping his head, his mind racing with fear. Would she survive? Back at school, Isabella hid behind the big tree, her whole body shaking as she cried. "What have I done? What have I done to myself?" she whispered through her sobs. Just then, Grace appeared. "I've been looking for you everywhere," she said, panting. "Why did you push that innocent woman?" Isabella slowly lifted her face, her eyes red and filled with tears. "Grace, I don't know what came over me," she said, her voice cracking. "I never thought I would do something so terrible to my own mother. Grace stepped back in shock. Your mother? That woman is your mom. Isabella nodded slowly. Yes. Grace's mouth fell open. How could you do that to your own mother? Tears streamed down Isabella's face as she tried to explain. It's because of Olivia. She's been bullying me for a while now, ever since I said I wanted to run for a class president. She's made my life miserable. I just wanted to fit in. I didn't want them to laugh at me. Before she could say another word, a loud voice interrupted them. Isabella, a security guard called. Her heart pounded. The principal is looking for you, he said. Isabella's breath caught in her throat, and her legs felt weak as she followed the guard. Maybe my mom reported me to the principal, she thought, her hands trembling. When she entered the office, the principal looked at her with a serious face. Isabella, I have bad news, he said. Your mother was in a terrible accident on her way home. Isabella froze. The room started spinning. No, no, she whispered, shaking her head. The principal's voice softened. She was rushed to the hospital. I know this is hard, but you need to be strong. Tears poured down Isabella's face. Please let me go see her, she pleaded. The principal nodded. The school driver will take you. Isabella ran out of the office and into the car. As they drove to the hospital, she clenched her hands together, her heart thumping in her chest. Please let her be okay. Please let her be okay, she prayed over and over again. When the car stopped in front of the hospital, she threw the door open and ran inside, not caring that people were staring. She rushed through the hallways, looking left and right, her heart pounding harder with every step. Where is she? Where's my mom? A nurse walked by, and Isabella grabbed her arm. My mom was in an accident. Where is she? She cried. The nurse's face turned sad. Follow me, she said gently. Isabella's legs felt like jelly as she followed the nurse. Every step felt like a lifetime. Her breathing was fast, and her hands shook. What if she doesn't wake up? What if I never get to say sorry? The nurse stopped in front of a door. She's in here, she said softly. Isabella hesitated. Her whole body trembled as she reached for the doorknob. She took a deep breath and pushed the door open, stepping inside with fear and hope battling in her heart. The moment she stepped inside, she froze. Her father stood by the bed, his eyes dark with anger. He glared at her, his fists clenched at his sides. Her mother lay unconscious in the hospital bed, an oxygen mask over her face. Aunt Lucia sat beside her, her face buried in her hands as she sobbed softly. Isabella's throat tightened. She wanted to run to her mother, to touch her, to beg for forgiveness. But before she could take a step, her father's voice thundered through the room. What do you want here? He demanded, his voice cold and sharp. Isabella's hands trembled. She lowered her head, shame washing over her like a giant wave. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I was foolish. I don't know what came over me. Her father's face twisted with hurt and disappointment. I can't believe you denied your own mother in front of your friends. You called her a housekeeper. How could you, Isabella? He said. Tears spilled down Isabella's cheeks. She took a shaky step toward her mother, reaching out a hand. But the loud roar from her father made her freeze in place. Don't touch her, he shouted. Isabella, go. Never come back. You'll cause us too much pain. Isabella's breath hitched. Dad, please? I'm sorry, she sobbed, clutching her chest as pain twisted inside her. Aunt Lucia stood up, her face wet with tears. It's okay, let's just... Her father interrupted her, his voice cracking with sorrow. No, she has done enough. Leave, Isabella. Leave and never come back. Isabella's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to move. She turned and stumbled out of the room, tears blinding her. Her heart felt like it had been ripped into pieces. She barely noticed as she got into the car that would take her back to school. She buried her face in her hands, her sobs shaking her whole body. The weight of her father's words crushed her. She had lost everything. When Isabella got back to school, she was shocked. The news had spread like wildfire. The moment she stepped into her class, whispers and murmurs filled the air. Then Olivia stood up, smirking. I heard someone denied her own mother because she's fat and shapeless, she sneered. The whole class burst into laughter. Imagine someone who could deny her own mother, Olivia continued, her voice dripping with mockery. Don't you think she could deny you 1,000,000 times if you vote her as class president? Isabella bent her head, her face burning with shame as the laughter echoed around her. The remaining minutes before dismissal felt like an eternity. As soon as the bell rang, she grabbed her backpack tightly and hurried out of the classroom. She kept her head down as she made her way back to the school dormitory. The moment she reached her bed, she collapsed onto it and burst into tears. She wished she could turn back time, erase everything, undo the pain she had caused. But no matter how much she wished, she knew it was impossible. Just then, the door swung open. It was Grace. "When will you stop crying?" Grace asked gently, her eyes full of concern. "So how is your mom now?" Isabella wiped her tears and sniffled. "She's not fine, Grace," she said in a shaky voice. "She's in a coma." Grace's eyes widened. "What? The accident was that serious?" Isabella nodded slowly. "I didn't know it was that bad," she whispered. Grace hesitated, then asked, "And your dad?" Hearing that question made fresh tears well up in Isabella's eyes. "He said he doesn't want to see me again," she admitted in a broken voice. "What do you mean?" Grace asked, her face filled with shock. He disowned me," Isabella said, her voice trembling. Tears rolled down her cheeks again. Grace sat beside her, trying to console her, but nothing seemed to help. The next day, when Isabella walked into the school hallway, she saw a cruel message written on the notice board. "Why vote for someone who denied her mother? She can do anything to you." Isabella's heart sank. She walked with her shoulders low, but Grace stayed beside her, whispering words of encouragement. "Ignore them, Isabella. It will all be okay," she said softly. Later in class, an announcement came. The principal wanted to see everyone interested in running for class president. Olivia and another girl immediately got up and walked toward the principal's office, but Isabella remained in her seat. "Aren't you going?" Grace asked, confused. "I don't want to contest anymore," Isabella said quietly. "What?" Grace gasped. "You can't do that. Remember, you're not doing this just for yourself. You're doing this for your mom. If this is the only thing you can do to make her happy, then you have to do it." Isabella remained silent. Grace reached for her hand. "I promise we'll visit your mom this weekend," she said. "Please, just do this for her." After much persuasion, Isabella finally agreed. She stood up and walked slowly down the hallway toward the principal's office, her shoulders still low. As soon as she entered, Olivia's eyes lit up with amusement. She smirked and crossed her arms. "So, you still have the guts to contest?" she giggled. The other contestant, a timid-looking girl, lowered her head in fear at Olivia's words. Olivia turned to her next. "I wonder why you're even here," she sneered. "Dragging for a position when your poor parents can't even afford 3 square meals a day. Shouldn't you be using your time to help put food on your family's table instead of competing with the rich?" Just then, the principal entered the office, and the room fell silent. Isabella swallowed hard, feeling her heart race. She knew this was going to be a battle she wasn't prepared for. The principal stood before the contestants. "I want to inform you about your upcoming speech presentation for the position of class president, which will take place after the PTA meeting." The students nodded and walked out. During the weekend, Grace and Isabella took permission from the school to visit Isabella's mom. On their way to the hospital, Isabella's heart was pounding. She was terrified of how her dad would react if he saw her. When they arrived, they rushed into the hospital room. Their hearts pounded as soon as they stepped inside. They realized something. Her dad wasn't there. The only person by her mom's side was her aunt, sitting beside the hospital bed looking exhausted. And there, lying still and lifeless, was her mom. Isabella's breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she walked closer, her hands trembling. Tears welled up in her eyes as she knelt beside the bed, reaching for her mom's cold hand. "Mom, it's me, Isabella," she whispered. I was a fool. Please forgive me." Her voice cracked as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. She clutched her mom's hand tighter. "I shouldn't have done what I did. I should have stood by you. I should have been proud of you," she sobbed. "Please wake up. Please, Mom. I need you." But there was no response, no movement, no sign that her mom could hear her. Isabella's aunt let out a tired sigh. "She's been like this since that day," she said quietly. "She hasn't woken up, not even once." Isabella shook her head, refusing to believe it. "She will wake up," she insisted, brushing her mom's hair gently. "She has to." She wiped her tears and sniffled. Then, with a shaky breath, she began telling her mom about the upcoming speech. "I know you wanted to be there," she whispered. "I know you were always proud of me, even when I didn't deserve it." Her aunt listened quietly, her eyes filled with sadness. A few moments later, she cleared her throat. "Isabella, your dad is on his way here," she said softly. Isabella's entire body tensed. "You should go," her aunt continued, "before he sees you here." Isabella hesitated. She didn't want to leave her mom's side, but she knew she couldn't face her dad. Not now. Grace gently touched her shoulder. "Come on, Isabella," she whispered. With one last look at her mom, Isabella wiped her tears, turned, and slipped out of hospital with Grace. A few days later, the competition for class president was getting intense. On her way to the restroom, Isabella noticed a third contestant walking out, her face pale, her eyes red and puffy. She looked humiliated. "What happened?" Isabella asked, stepping toward her, but the girl didn't answer. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but quickly shut it, looking terrified. Just then, Olivia strutted out of the same restroom, a smug smile on her face. Isabella's stomach twisted. She didn't need to hear the words. She knew Olivia had done something terrible, but no one dared to say a thing. Later, back in class, whispers filled the air. Then, the unexpected happened. The third contestant stood up and announced, "I'm dropping out of the race for class president." Gasps spread through the classroom. Isabella clenched her fists. Olivia had scared the girl into quitting. As Olivia smirked from across the room, Isabella's jaw tightened. She wasn't going to let Olivia win this way. Isabella sat quietly in the school hallway, her heart heavy with worry. The class president contest was only a few days away, but her mind was not on the competition. Instead, it was filled with thoughts of her mom. She had asked Grace to take flowers to her mom, hoping it would bring her some comfort. But when Grace returned, her face was pale with shock. "Isabella, your mom is not in the hospital," Grace whispered, her voice trembling. Isabella felt her stomach twist. "What do you mean she's not there?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Her hospital room is empty. I asked the nurses, but they wouldn't give me a clear answer. They just kept saying they don't know where she is," Grace said, gripping Isabella's arm. Isabella's hand started shaking, and a cold fear spread through her body. Could it be? No, she refused to think about it. She refused to believe the worst. The hours leading to the class president contest dragged on. Isabella barely heard the murmurs and chatter around her as students and parents filled the hall. The stage was set, the microphone positioned in the center, and a large banner reading "Class President's Speech Presentation" hung above them. Isabella sat stiffly in her chair, her hands clenched into fists. Just as the event was about to begin, a security guard approached her, handing her a letter. With trembling fingers, she opened it and read the words that made her world stop. "Your mother has passed away." The paper slipped from her hands. Her heart pounded violently in her chest. The room around her blurred as hot tears welled in her eyes. She could barely breathe. "No, no, this isn't happening," she whispered, shaking her head. Grace immediately grabbed her, her voice urgent. "Isabella, stay strong. You need to hold yourself together. You can do this." But how could she? How could she stand up there and speak when her whole world had just fallen apart? The contest began. Olivia strutted confidently onto the stage, her smirk growing wider as she spotted Isabella's tear-streaked face. She began her speech, talking about leadership, discipline, and all the things she thought made her the perfect class president. The crowd clapped, impressed by her confidence. Isabella could barely hear her. Her mind was drowning in sorrow. When Olivia finished, the host called, "Isabella, it's your turn." Her legs felt like lead as she walked toward the stage. Her hands trembled as she clutched her speech paper. She stared at the words she prepared, but they no longer made sense to her. The sentences blurred, her tears making it impossible to read. The crowd whispered, waiting for her to speak. The weight of their stares pressed heavily on her. Then she did something unexpected. She dropped the paper to the floor, took a deep breath, and wiped the tears from her face. "I can't read this speech," she said, her voice shaky but strong, "because it doesn't hold the truth of my heart. I need to say something real." The audience fell into complete silence. Isabella's lips trembled, but she forced herself to continue. "I am the girl who denied her mother weeks ago. Many of you know the story, some of you don't. But today, you will all know the truth." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Isabella swallowed the lump in her throat and went on. "That day, I let fear control me. I let the cruel words of bullies make me ashamed of the woman who gave me life. Because of my selfishness, my mother went home heartbroken. She had an accident that left her in a coma for weeks. I prayed for a second chance to say sorry, but today she took her last breath. She died without ever hearing my apology." Gasps filled the room. Some parents covered their mouths in shock. Students sat frozen in their seats. Isabella's tears spilled freely now, but she didn't stop. The people I tried to impress, the ones I was so desperate to fit in with, they didn't care. They laughed at my pain and mocked me when I was at my lowest. I gave up my own mother's love for people who never valued me. That was the biggest mistake of my life. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but if I can use this moment for anything, I want to tell every student here. Never deny your parents. Never be ashamed of the people who love you. If you do, you will regret it. And by the time you realize it, it might be too late. Silence stretched in the hall. Then, slowly, claps began to rise from the audience. It started with a few parents, then spread like wildfire. The hall erupted in applause. Some teachers wiped tears from their eyes. Even students who had mocked Isabella before sat still, their faces unreadable. The principal was shocked. "Who told you your mother is dead?" he asked. Just then, the hall fell silent. Isabella looked up, her eyes widening as she saw her father pushing her mother in a wheelchair. Her heart pounded. "Mom!" she cried out, dropping the microphone. She walked slowly toward her mother, shame and guilt pressing down on her like a heavy weight. She hesitated, scared to hug her, but then her mother opened her arms, and Isabella rushed into them, holding her tightly. "I thought you were gone," she said. "No, my daughter, who said such a thing?" her mother replied gently. The principal immediately led them to a corner. "Who told you your mother was dead?" he asked firmly. Isabella pulled out the letter and explained, "The school gatekeeper gave it to me." The principal's face darkened. The gatekeeper was summoned at once. At first, he denied everything, but after much pressure, he admitted to delivering the letter. "I didn't even know what was inside," he insisted. "Who gave it to you?" the principal demanded. The gatekeeper hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. Then with a sigh, he confessed, "It was Olivia." Gasps echoed in the hall. All eyes turned to Olivia. She stiffened, her face pale. "Olivia, did you write this letter?" the principal asked, his voice sharp. She shook her head frantically. "No, I don't know anything about it." But under the principal's firm gaze, and after several moments of silence, she finally broke. "Fine, I did it. I wanted to distract Isabella so she would fail her speech, and I could win the election," she admitted, tears of anger welling in her eyes. The room filled with whispers. Students shook their heads in disappointment. Even Olivia's closest friend stepped away from her. The principal asked, "How much did you pay him?" "Nothing," the gatekeeper quickly said. "She didn't give me any money." Just then, Olivia clutched her stomach and rushed toward the restroom. Moments later, she was heard vomiting. "Are you all right, Olivia?" the principal asked, concerned. "I'm fine," she said weakly, "just a stomach upset." But the principal wasn't convinced. "Take her to the school clinic. We need to know what's wrong." Minutes later, the school nurse returned with the test results. She looked at Olivia, then back at the principal. "She's pregnant." A stunned silence filled the hall. Students exchanged shocked glances. Some gasped, while others simply stared at Olivia in disbelief. "Who is responsible?" the principal asked sternly. Olivia hesitated, her eyes darting around. Finally, with her head bowed in shame, she whispered, "The gatekeeper." The hall erupted in noise. The truth was finally out. The gatekeeper turned pale as security officers arrived and took him away. The principal sighed and turned back to Olivia. "You've mocked and bullied others, but you've hidden your own secrets. How could you?" It was then that the students learned Olivia's real story. She was an orphan, not a billionaire's daughter, as she had claimed. She had been living under a scholarship provided by an NGO. Her entire life had been a lie. Without wasting time, the principal handed Olivia a letter of expulsion and terminated her scholarship. Her world crumbled before her eyes. Tears streamed down her face as she realized she had lost everything. "Please, I have nowhere to go," she pleaded, looking around desperately. But the principal was firm. "You must leave immediately." Olivia stood outside the school gates, her whole world crashing down. Tears streamed down her face as she realized she had lost everything. Her friends, her reputation, her scholarship. She had nowhere to go. As she turned to leave, she spotted Isabella, Grace, and Isabella's mom standing near the parking lot. Summoning her courage, she ran toward them, falling to her knees. "Please forgive me," she sobbed, looking up at Isabella's mom. "I don't have anywhere to go." Isabella's mom sighed and gently touched her shoulder. "Stand up, my dear," she said softly. "Everyone makes mistakes." But Isabella and Grace remained silent, their faces cold and unreadable. The betrayal was too deep, The wound's too fresh. Olivia hesitated, then swallowed hard. Please, may I come with you? I have nowhere else, she begged, her voice barely above a whisper. Isabella's eyes flared with anger. She stepped forward, her voice shaking. Over my dead body, she snapped. What happened to your rich parents, huh? The ones you lied about? You fooled everyone, Olivia, and now you want my family to save you? Grace shook her head in disappointment. You hurt so many people, Olivia, she said quietly. Olivia lowered her head in shame. The weight of her actions pressed down on her like a heavy stone. She had spent years looking down on others, pretending to be someone she wasn't, and now she had nothing. With one last pleading look, she whispered, I'm sorry, but this time no one responded. Feeling utterly alone, Olivia turned and walked away, disappearing into the distance. Isabella hugged her mom tightly, then turned to Grace. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. That day, she walked away from the contest. She no longer cared about winning. She had already won something greater, her mother's love and forgiveness, and that was more than enough. Later that night, back in the dormitory, Isabella was lying in bed when Grace suddenly gasped. Isabella, look! She pointed at her phone. Isabella sat up quickly and stared at the school's website. A bold headline flashed across the screen. Isabella wins the class president position. Her heart raced. She covered her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Grace squealed with excitement. You did it, Isabella. Isabella's lips trembled as a tear rolled down her cheek. She had almost lost everything, her mom, her future, her confidence. But now she had a chance to make things right. Taking a deep breath, she whispered, I will do my best. I promise. Moral of the story. Honesty, self-respect, and valuing the love of those who care for you are far more important than seeking approval from others. The story highlights the consequences of denying those who love and support you in favor of shallow approval, and the power of seeking redemption and growth through self-awareness and making amends. It also emphasizes that genuine success comes from embracing who you are, showing humility, and learning from your mistakes. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your time and support. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share for more amazing content.